Council meeting to order. Delegations, we have Captain Peters here to present us with a Zoom presentation on sex trafficking in BC and methods to help protect communities. And the floor is yours, Ms. Peters.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is all working. Okay. Thank you, your worship and councillors, for this opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the issue of human sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and child sex trafficking for the purpose of prostitution in Canada, BC, and locally. Last March 8th on International Women's Day, I launched the Be Amazing Stop Sexual Exploitation campaign. Here's my bumper sticker, Be Amazing Stop Sexual Exploitation. That's my bumper sticker. There's the button, Be Amazing. And I also have a brand new website. It is www.beamazingcampaign.org. Now, I sent that, included that in the package that I mailed to you. So hopefully you'll have a look at that. The videos on page 2 on my website were videotaped by the RCMP and are useful for training purposes for law enforcement and for any community. Human sex trafficking and sexual exploitation for the purpose of prostitution is now the fastest growing crime in the world in Canada, and it's in every community. So what is human trafficking? It's the recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercising control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. The key word here is exploitation. It is modern day slavery. I want to give you some stats. Now I can just say them, but I can also hold them up. I don't know how, if you can you see this, or is the screen too small?
No, we can see it.
Okay, so the average age for recruitment is 13 years of age, and it's much younger for Indigenous girls. The RCMP report that 70% in the sex industry are under 25 years of age, 54% are Indigenous, so they are severely overrepresented in the sex industry. If you go to the downtown east side, it's 80%. If you go to the province of Manitoba, it's 70%. 82% involved in prostitution had childhood sexual abuse or incest, which is preparation for prostitution later on. 72% live with PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress disorder, so the trauma has to be addressed. 95% who are in prostitution want to leave, and most people don't know that. It is not a choice, it is not a job. 86% have housing needs, so homelessness makes them vulnerable. 82% need drug rehabilitation because drugs and the sex industry go together. So I've been raising awareness about sexual exploitation and specifically child sexual exploitation and trafficking to every city council, MLA, and MP and police agency in British Columbia since we've had a law, and you should know the name of it. It's called the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act. Here's the name of it. We call it PSEPA, the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act. So I've been raising awareness about this law so the police would enforce it. They're not enforcing it in British Columbia, so that the public would understand it and be able to report it. So it has 3 parts. First of all, it targets the demand by targeting the buyer of sex. So the predator, trafficker, pimp, facilitator, the John, the buyer of sex is criminalized. Number 2, it recognizes the seller of sex as a victim is usually female and is not criminalized. And number 3, there's supposed to be exit strategy in place to help that victim out of the sex trade. So this is a radical change in the law, focusing on the source of the harm, the buyers of sex and the profiteers. So the clear statement from government was that girls and women in Canada are not for sale. Here's an RCMP poster. They have the I'm Not For Sale campaign. That in fact, women and girls are full human beings with dignity and human rights. So we're talking about human rights and gender equality. So Vancouver and Toronto are global hotspots, global sex tourism hotspots. And Canada is now known to be a child sex tourism destination. And in BC, nobody knows that. Vancouver is a port city, as you all know, and an entry point into Canada. Gangs, organized crime, and international crime syndicates are all in the Lower Mainland. Crime follows the money, and human sex trafficking is really lucrative, and they're probably not going to get caught. So council has received my package. Those handouts I've given you, and they're also on my website, are a really good way to start addressing human sex trafficking. You'll find that information useful. So the global sex trade is moving really fast, and it's targeting our children because that's where the money is. It's fueled by the internet, where most of the luring is taking place. Think Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, even Pinterest. The predators are there luring children. So contributing factors to a rapidly growing sex industry is globalization, and here we got it, globalization, unregulated technology, no surprise, limited law enforcement, they're just not getting the training, and very little prevention education. So I do the prevention education piece. Canada has a brand new national human trafficking hotline number, and here it is. You should all know it. I included a wallet card in with the package. It's 1-833-900-1010, 1-833-900-1010, and people can get help in any corner of Canada. I also, OCTIP has a helpline, and I sent their pamphlet as well. OCTIP stands for the Office to Combat Trafficking in Persons, and that is organized by and paid for by the British Columbia provincial government. Pornography is fueling the sex industry and creating the market for commercially paid sex. Men and boys are the buyers of sex and need to understand they are the key to end exploitation. And here's the most important line, and I just gave this to all the Indigenous chiefs of BC that I presented to last week. Our boys and men must understand that there is a sacred part of the woman they have no right to. And they understood that language. There has to be a deterrent to the demand. Johns and buyers of sex need to know that they could get caught and that buying women and girls is illegal and unacceptable in a modern equal society. So what can you do as a small community? You can train your business licensing managers what to look for when granting business licenses. So you have control over the type of business activity you have in Cache Creek. For example, unregistered, these are the big ones, massage and body rub parlors, nail spas, holistic health centers, day spas, modeling agencies, tattoo parlors, escort services, cheap bars and hotels, men's clubs, Airbnb, VRBO, casinos, strip clubs, organized crime clubhouses can all be typical covers for sex trafficking and exploitation. Regarding hotels and motels, and I just Googled Cache Creek, I think you've got 5, is that right? Ontario has now just come up with a way to curb trafficking. Everybody that comes to use a hotel room has to be registered. So in Vancouver, for example, there's human trafficking probably happening in every hotel. So that's one simple thing you can do, is make sure everybody that's in that hotel room or motel room is registered. Cache Creek is an important transportation junction and only 4 hours from Vancouver. You are in a strategic position, and council needs to be aware of this growing crime. Indigenous women leaders tell me of increased abduction attempts all over BC, for example. They're not wanting to report to police, they don't trust them, so they're phoning me. So I'm working very closely with Indigenous women leaders all over British Columbia. Before COVID, my presentations were to the Lower Mainland. Now with COVID, I can present all over BC, which is wonderful. But let me give you a couple of examples. Port Coquitlam, that's Robert Picton territory, now shuts down all non-registered massage parlors, and they don't allow any Airbnb. They really want to put a damper on the sex industry. Vancouver Police Department, I work really closely with them. They are so awesome. They're great. They did a big John sting in 2019 and charged 47 men who were looking to buy sex with underage girls. So that was very successful. I live in North Vancouver, and we had the trafficker Reza Mazami, who received the longest jail time in Canada at 23 years. He trafficked at least 20 girls, 9 of them underage, and there were 4 of them from the North Shore where I live. I presented to the Delta Police Board because they discovered a prostitution ring in one of their high schools. The concern now is that there's prostitution rings growing up in many of the high schools in BC. It's not uncommon for girls to recruit their friends into the sex industry, and the ages are getting younger. As a Surrey youth outreach worker told me, in Surrey, the sex traffickers are targeting 10 to 12-year-olds. So that's grade 4 to grade 6. And they can do it within 24 hours. BC is getting further and further behind all provinces in Canada. Ontario and Manitoba are best practices globally. We are 30 years behind them in enforcing the federal law and raising awareness with prevention education. Therefore, BC and the Lower Mainland is the best place in Canada to buy and sell women and children for sex. Public awareness in BC is completely lacking. It doesn't exist. The media typically has a one-side pro-sex industry narrative, making it very difficult to counter. That's why I have sent information packages to all 190 city councils in BC to warn you all of this rapidly growing crime. I do have 2 asks, and then maybe you've got questions for me. Number 1, could you please alert the Premier and Solicitor General that this crime is a priority in BC, and ask for funding for provincial law enforcement along with a provincial awareness campaign. We need a human sex trafficking task force, similar for what we have for drugs and gangs. So the key thing is here, funding for enforcement and provincial awareness campaign. So I'm doing the awareness campaign piece. Number 2, could you please write me a letter of support? And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Peters, for that presentation. No objections in putting this on our website? No? Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And one question that I have, if I may, what have you seen in the duration of sentences to perpetrators involved in the sex industry?
Well, just the John sting that the Vancouver Police Department did a year and a half ago, and they went for buyers of sex that were targeting underage girls, but only VPD. They're very specialized in this, and they have a huge sex crimes unit that I work with. The problem is, you're under the jurisdiction of the RCMP, and they really have one person doing all of this for the whole province. I think they might have hired a second person. The RCMP is just not getting the job done, in my opinion, since you asked me. Now, Reza Mazami, I mentioned he's a trafficker that was charged, but we need the buyers of sex charged. Because if you don't have a deterrent, that's why BC is the best place to buy and sell women and girls for sex in the whole country and out of the United States. That's how bad it has gotten.
So is it fair to say that the legal system itself is part of the problem?
Oh, that's fair enough to say. Good
Thank
for
you.
you. Crown Counsel don't have the training, and the judges don't have the training.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Peters? Thank you very much for the hard work you do. Thank you for being with us tonight. Appreciate it.
A privilege.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. You are good to go, sir.
Great. Minutes. The regular council meeting held on February 16th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
So moved. Okay.
Discussion. All in favor? That was carried unanimously. Business arising from delegation that we write Miss Peters and thank her for her hard work and her presentation tonight via Zoom.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All in favor? And that was carried unanimously as well. Business arising from the minutes.
One
Sorry?
question though.
Yeah.
Kathy Peters requested a letter of support. Should we, well, that's an additional item.
Okay. So she asked for actually two. One letter to the Premier and Solicitor General asking for a task force and policing to deal with the sex trafficking issues of British Columbia, and the second letter, two separate letters, letter of support for her initiatives.
So moved. Second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Business arising from the minutes. Committee reports, Councillor Peters and Councillor Coomber.
I have no report. No report from me?
Budget and Administrative Services, Councillor Peters and Councillor Coomber.
I would move that we request an extension to the rural dividend grant received in 2016 for an economic development action plan, so that we can actually make use of those funds.
Second.
Discussion. I'm going to ask CFO Martini, please. Two questions I have is the money received, where was it placed? And two, a summary of from when we got the money to where we are today.
Well, the money was received in 2016 and obviously was received, was granted to us to do some work on some studies for some needs that we had at that time. And I assume that initially the funds were recorded as revenue. And then when we had the audit in 2019, I think there were some emails from the province requesting the funds because we didn't do the project. And the funds were recorded as a liability. And this year the auditor asked me if we are going to send the money back, but coincidentally, the very day I received an email from the province asking me if we want to request an extension, and I'm like, sure, why not? So that's why I brought this up to the council to see if we want to send the money back, do we want to act on this, do we want to change the scope of that study?
I think it's a good time to polish off our community profile economic development plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Well, I'm going to need to know if the council wants to first proceed with the grant as was initially applied for, or do we want to also, in addition to the extension request, to change the scope of the study?
Would that affect the extension?
No.
What would the parameters be for that?
Well, I don't know, it's the council has to decide,
I'll move that we proceed.
just as is, as we applied initially, okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Sorry, I'm making notes.
Carried. Cache Creek Community Fund. We provide the fund with a summary and additional information as requested to the BC Community Foundation regarding the Cache Creek Community Fund. And from what I gather, they're asking us for the criteria on how we want to send the fund up and who is eligible or ineligible, etc.
That's actually not what I got from reading this. I think they're just looking for a little promotional thing to put on their website. I could be wrong, but
No.
no?
That's how I understood
That's
it
how
as
I
well.
kind of read it. Like,
There was a handwritten note as well. Did you get the
Okay.
handwritten note?
no.
Okay. So what they're after is, yes, you're correct. Two is they're asking us, because it's gonna go on a website, what the criteria is for us. So in other words, they don't have to come up to us for the information. They can go on the website, and it's gonna be, well, residents of Cache Creek only, or businesses of Cache Creek only, or I'm just using these as examples, but that's my impression of what, two parts. One is the promotional end of things, and one is the criteria end of things, so it can be placed on their website. And we've discussed this before,
Yes.
to some extent.
And I was gonna look it up today, and then I thought, well, that's not, I didn't think that was what they were asking for, so I didn't complete that thought. But it's out
Okay,
there
well,
somewhere.
we can table it, or lay it on the table until next meeting, and give council members an opportunity to think about it and come up with some recommendations they would like to see.
We
So
can share-
moved.
We can share the information that we have with everyone.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Non-structural flood mitigation grant. Council received and filed a report by CFO Martini.
So moved.
Second.
And we, again, my question is to CFO Martini is, the funds were received,
Yes.
placed where?
The funds were received in 2017 and they were recorded as revenue. We finalized the project last year, and of course, we didn't use up all the funds. Therefore, we have to return the short budgeted amount. But I also want to add that because the revenue was recognized in 2017 and the work was done in 2020, and therefore the expenditure was incurred in 2020, we are actually in a deficit position by that amount, the amount of the project.
And the amount of the project is 150,000 minus the 15
Yes.
and
that's
change.
correct. Yes.
So for clarification, a deficit position means what?
155,000. When we incur expenses without having the revenue to cover for.
So just want to reiterate, the money was given to us, put into the operating budget,
Yeah, in 2017,
and now we're in a deficit.
yes,
Thank you.
correct. But we have no choice, we have to return that additional fund. because-
Understood. I want clear clarification. Thank you. Did we vote on that one? I'm
No.
sorry.
We have a
No.
vote,
Did we have a motion?
though. Yep, we did.
And the seconder?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Voyent alert. The council authorized the purchase for that program, and I believe $960 per year, capped at $480 for usage.
You move that?
I can, sure.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Policy and bylaw review. The village recommendations that council will take. This is going to be in, going back to bylaw number 5-001, second reading to the Village of Cache Creek bylaw. 5-001, the Business License Amendment 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Carried. And of course, the request from Williams Lake First Nations.
You have to do the final? That was only the second.
Well, this is where I need some assistance, if I may. If we go to the recommendation from the First Nations, not the recommendation, but to entertain the request from First Nations, do we have to go to third reading?
That's the next
Okay.
bylaw. This bylaw is just considering
Okay.
the business licenses.
Thank you. And we're going to second reading?
I move that we give final consideration and adopt the Village of Cache Creek Bylaw 5-001 Business Licensing Amendment 2021, a bylaw to amend the Village of Cache Creek Bylaw number 495, 1993, a bylaw governing licenses and regulations for carrying on business within the Village of Cache Creek.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. What, third time or no? Nope. Okay, request for Williams Lake First Nations. The council amend the buffer zone prior to adoption.
I would move that this be tabled until we have time to discuss it with the school board representatives, because that's where the biggest concern came from. And it was their request to go with the 200 meters at our working group meetings. So I would like to table that until we have a chance to discuss that with them as well.
Any further discussion? All in favor of tabling? Joint bylaw?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, that's a point of order. We weren't discussing the zoning amendment. We were discussing the Williams Lake Dan's letter.
Pardon me?
We were still on the Williams Lake First Nations letter. We weren't on the zoning amendment.
Wait, didn't we just vote on that?
So no, it was kind of mixed up because we were on the letter, which we don't want to respond to until after we discuss with the school districts. But so number 3 would have to be tabled as well.
Yeah, and I went to bylaw
Right.
enforcement.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I would.
Yeah.
No, we still
two
have to,
separate
we
things.
still have to, I move that we also table the second reading of our bylaw 6-001 zoning amendment 2021 until we have time as well, until the discussions have been held with the school district.
Second.
Fair enough. All in favor?
I would move that my report on the bylaw enforcement, joint bylaw enforcement working group be received and filed.
Second.
And just for information, there is our logo.
Nice.
So it encompasses all 3 communities in that, and it'll be high resolution. This is just a draft, but yeah. So
That's good.
the business cards, the decals on the vehicles, everything will be based on that.
Thank you.
Should we vote on
We can.
it? I don't know if we have to. Do we have to?
Oh, receive and file. We can,
We already did. I
Okay.
moved, I second.
Okay,
all in favor? Carried.
sorry. Shuffle papers, my bad.
Internet policy. Councillor Cooper.
I just have a couple of comments. It's good policy. Page 34, the first page of it, just under 3.0 responsibilities, the last line, not copy village files, or this is for council members, not copy village files off the network to a personal electronic device. Would that include downloading minutes?
No,
Okay.
it's just operational files and that pertain to the archive and the working documents.
Okay. And
Because the council meetings are public and they are public records.
okay. And on page 3, under disciplinary actions, it might be helpful to quote the policies that are applicable, like policy C6, disciplinary procedures, just so there's a bit more detail
Okay.
in that.
Councilor Peters?
Just back to page 34, under scope, I would like to see volunteers. Scope, so right here, there are volunteers included in that, as our fire department is a volunteer department, and they may have access. I doubt they would have very much, but it would be good to have covered in there. And on page 30,
But do they access village technology? Or do they just access their own devices?
In the event of an emergency, they
yeah, in an
may.
emergency, they may.
Mhm.
So I think it's not gonna hurt to have it
Okay.
in. Also, if we have like I don't know,
Yeah, okay.
we have it in a lot of other things. I'd like to see there. And then also on page 35, unsolicited, pardon me, under security, second last bullet point
Mhm.
is unsolicited commercial email is considered a potential security threat. They are to block the center and report the message as junk. That should also be referred to senior staff as well,
Okay.
so that there's an ongoing record of it, just in case something else happens.
Employee,
Re-
okay,
and
employee
report
senior
to-
staff.
Report to CAO or however you want. I think that should be what. And then I just had a question on confidentiality with emails, is that when we have something that's being shared to update council, that rather that it be sent out in an email as it has been, that it be put into the secure site, like where our closed minutes are, rather than in an email that could be hacked.
Okay. So I'm going to take that bullet point.
I'll give it to you after.
Okay.
But thank you, that's,
Anything further?
Got mine.
Public Works and Community Facilities, myself and Councillor Defoe. Councillor Defoe?
I move that we receive and file the work safe BC inspection reports.
That must be in camera. I made a
Yeah,
mistake.
that's okay. We'll receive and file and then we'll discuss it in camera. Thanks.
second.
Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Cache Creek Pool?
That snuck up on me. Hope you've had the chance to read the letter from Ms. Daniels. Quite the discussion on Facebook in the last few days. Never seems to stop. And also, one of the posters offered what looks like it may be a useful areas to find grants at. I would also like to note that we promised a public meeting some time ago to explain the money situation and answer questions. And so I urge council to make this happen now. Public meetings can still happen safely, whether in person or by video. If there is a will, there's a way. Other communities have done it, and Cache Creek is no less capable than they are. I urge council to set a date before the end of March for a public meeting. There will never be a perfect time. This is March, 2 years later, and it's time to take action. 2 years ago, Mayor Tallarico suggested that with the extra gas tax income that year, that we keep the pool open in 2019 and look forward to replacing it with another facility for 2020. And we did that. In 2019, we kept the pool open. Later that year, we all passed a motion to hold a public meeting. Our gallery that day was filled with people asking questions about the pool, and again, our mayor spoke for us when he said there would be a public meeting at which we would prepare a list of detailed expenditures as well as projected repair costs. Much has happened since then. The new landfill didn't materialize until this year. COVID has separated us. Last year, 3 months of flooding took a lot out of us, and yet a promise is a promise. I move that we instruct staff to gather the information required for a public meeting on the future of the pool, and that mayor and council present that information and answer questions at a public meeting on or before our next council meeting on March 15th.
Second.
Discussion.
Given everything else that's going on right now, I don't think that's enough time. I do agree that we need to still have that public meeting. I don't know if any of you watched the Hub Online Network preview to our council meeting tonight, but they have done some research that I would like to do some conversations with them. And one of them was about funding that's available through the Recreation Commission and that possibly available?
No, so
They're not.
I'm not talking.
Okay. Anyway, apparently there's funding available that can be used towards assessing what needs to be done to our pool and looking at ways of rectifying it and looking at what the alternative side would be is what would be involved with a new pool. So I would like to access that information and perhaps, and the cost was approximately $7,500, which to me would be money well spent. It would allay concerns of transparency, it would allay concerns of lack of communication, and I think that an independent audit would, or an independent assessor would give us a better ground, or a better ground floor to start from.
Anybody else?
What time frame did you say?
March 15th, on or before March 15th. We have the information, we've talked about it, it's been 2 years. We can delay and delay and delay some more, but it's just a public meeting to present the facts as we know them and the money situation and to answer questions.
And the money situation is what then, Councillor Coomer? Explain that, I would like you to explain that to me.
No, our CFO will help us in that, and we will use that information to relay it to the public.
Yeah, the 2 weeks is not reasonable because right now we have an audit. I have to work on the budget, which has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And I have lots of reporting to do right now, and we have the major projects that need to be finalized. So 2 weeks is not a reasonable time frame.
What would you suggest?
Well, we have to finalize the budget first before we make any decision.
However, I think where Councillor Coomber is going is how do we make those decisions at our budget meeting without input to facts?
If I may speak, I've asked our CFO to gather that information, to check with Public Works to see what it's going to need to get it operational. Our CFO has contacted Interior Health to do a primary assessment on the facility and to go back on the records of 2016 when we had a report done that itemized things that were needed or needed attention or should be tested. And from that, there is, I'm not sure where the work safe criteria comes into this equation. However, we have started the ball moving in that direction. The critical portion is we have to know where we stand in our budget, and you heard me say this many times. this year, especially, before we enter in a meeting with the public so we can give them those figures. Now, we are at this stage, all in March, so now we're trying to get this rolling to some extent. We understand the concerns of the people out there. They want to see a pool. So do we. But reality is reality. We don't know what the percentage of property tax increase for 2021 is going to be. And for us to give them, and we have an idea, and the CFO and I have discussed that today, just in a general sense when we were discussing the pool. However, until we have those figures, I can't say personally, I can't support it until we know what those figures are. So later in the in-camera portion, we will discuss a budget meeting and a date.
I am happy to hear that you are talking about that. It's in our 5-year budget. There is a line for the pool, fully funded.
And where's the money going to come from, Councillor Cover? I don't need to see that.
You know,
I'm not going to debate with you. We're going to have a discussion, provisional budget, to enter into a dialogue with the public right at this moment without the facts doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, we're going to put it to a vote. I understand. We have your motion on the floor, and we'll proceed on.
Just the other question is on what Councillor Peters was saying about this funding available for assessment of the pool, with the cost is quite a bit substantially lower than what was given to us at the last meeting, because it was just a rough idea. So the cost of $7,500, is there any idea on how long
No,
that
I
takes?
only just
or-
watched the video just before I came, and so there I have not had any time to do any kind of research on that, so.
just very quick, if we move this beyond March, we're going to lose the window if there was ever a hope of opening it this year.
And I think a lot of the grants that are available require us to apply for them fairly quickly because of the season.
But even if the funding will become available, it's not going to become available in 2-3 months.
Yes,
Usually when you apply for a grant, you get the money within, you get approved. For example, last year we applied for the asset management with Ashgrove. I didn't get approval and it's 8 months later. So it's not just that we apply and then that's done.
we have an unexpected COVID startup grant.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not going to cover that.
It's for
And there are
$100,000.
The criteria doesn't permit us to operate a pool with a COVID startup fund.
We didn't we asked for the criteria of that $460,000 fund, and we haven't received anything on the criteria of that as yet today. But going back to these grants, these are summer grants, and these grants are normally given quite quickly because they are for students going back to work and that sort of thing. So I would have to disagree on the grant application
Yeah, but
funding coming
But those
slowly.
students are not going to keep the pool operational. That's probably just to cover their wages.
There's some of that, yes. But so there is, I'm, from my understanding, I think that these grants would be supported quicker than
But
the
even if
larger
they are
grants.
supported quicker, they only cover for like the summer student wage. They don't cover for operation, for the
Mhm.
pool operation.
And that's where we get back to, what is the problem with the pool? What are the costs with the pool? These are concerns that have been going on for quite some time, well before the COVID. And so we're still sitting here waiting for that information. And it's March. That if we're gonna open the pool, we need to apply for these grants so that we can hire students, and get this pool open. That's, the deadlines are coming.
Yeah, I know, but I think the budget is probably what's going to dictate if we are going to be open or not.
That's what's being lost in this whole discussion. So, can you reiterate your motion, please?
I move that we instruct staff to gather the information required for a public meeting on the future of the pool, and that mayor and council present that information and answer questions at a public meeting on or before our next council meeting on March 15th.
And you wouldn't consider adding a friendly minute to after the budget is completed?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Okay, on to the next one. Villages Services Liaison, Councillor Defoe and Councillor Coomber.
Nothing from me.
I have nothing.
Protective Services, myself and Councillor Coomber.
Did you want to talk about the phone call that we had with Winrow?
We had we had two calls actually. One was with, that comes up later, but one with MLA Taggart, and then a second one with Flynn Road, which is forestry lands, oceans, rural development. It's pretty much everything. They don't know what else to do with it at the provincial level. The conversation with MLA Taggart was more to do with what can she as our representative do, and she has sent a letter on our behalf asking for the 3 levels of government to work together. The conversation that we had with Flynn Road was, to me, quite encouraging, because a lot of our challenges in last year's freshet was lack of information and lack of reliable gauging. They have, since that time, they have reactivated one of the defunct stations north of us.
At Hat Creek,
At Hat Creek, and another one at Dead Man's, Joe Ross Creek for Cash Creek. So there is more information available for us instead of us depending on anecdotal information. It was also discussed that our freshet issues last year with Cash Creek were not necessarily caused by snow melt, but they were precipitation events, and those you can't predict too far in advance. We're hoping that we can get some more information available, and there is some things being developed, unfortunately will not be ready for this year, that will help make the river forecasting, it's called. We were on a number of times based on predicted weather events that were coming. We were told to prepare for higher than 1990 levels, which were catastrophic for Cash Creek. And so we would put our emergency plans into motion, and we would have the RCMP involved and the fire department involved, and information out, and then have it not happen. And so those were a lot of our challenges. Environment Canada told us to rely on satellite imagery, and I sat in a torrential downpour looking at the satellite that said it was clear. So, the information that we were getting was not always reliable, so they are taking steps forward to make that better reporting for us to be able to make our predictions and our plans on.
going to be new snowpack information. And apparently one of the computer models they have will download the information into Google Earth, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Last year we were fortunate, Flynn Road did a flyover of the plateau up above us to an Arrowstone to see where we were at with snow. That was actually ordered by Flynn Road through Ingham, BC. It's not something they would do without prior approval, but if we are in that situation again, that they would apply for funding and it would be approved for us to have that information as well. We also asked about how far ahead can we order things from EMBC. Many of you know we used the HESCO bins at the fire hall and the tumbleweed last year to control the water coming over the culvert, and they were extremely successful. So we're very fortunate that Gary Winslow took some amazing photos, so we have an exact plan of what that looks like. So those will be applied for mid-March. As well, sandbags and sand for, we unfortunately because of COVID again can't have a sandbagging bee, but we will be able to place sand and sandbags in strategic locations around town so that people can get their sandbags ready in advance of freshet. So, and again, mid-March for those.
So would this cost be covered by the
Yes.
response? Okay.
I think we finally got it through that our worst concern right now is debris and water and bank destabilization. So our EOC deputy director asked if the local Bonaparte monitor had been calibrated, and our Flinro representatives said they usually do that every month, but they're having trouble with gravel deposits in the water. There are gravel deposits everywhere. That's just going to make this year even more hectic. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, I felt like we're being heard, whereas in any of the past conversations, I think that we were kind of brushed off.
Yeah.
So this one was extremely positive to me.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry, I guess I jumped the gun on your report. You're going to give it a little bit later, but it's good.
It's done now.
Is there anything further? Fire department training on February 20th, 21st. 10 members of our department spent the weekend completing their phase 1 of exterior operations practical and the written to follow on Tuesday, March 2nd. Extra SCB training on the new Scott packs or the SCBA gear was done on Sunday as well. So a thank you to them for taking their personal time to better themselves, to help us keep us to become better trained and keep us safe when in event of fires. And can't say enough about our fire department. Anything further? Intergovernmental relations, myself and Councillor Coomer.
What are your wishes? Because I'd like to defer this. I asked for a list of the invasive plants, and I don't see it here. And until I know what we're looking for, Mr. Vieira said they don't take care of nuisance weeds, so the program only works if we have their definition of a noxious weed, and I'm not sure what that is. So would you like to defer this decision until the next meeting?
Second.
I'll move that, okay.
And remind Mr. Vieira that he promised that to us.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Landfill Advisory Committee, or is there anything further I might ask under intergovernmental relations? No? Landfill Advisory Committee, myself and Councillor Coomer. Just CFO Martini and myself spent a Zoom meeting with Russ Black from Belcorp, and basically the long and short of the meeting was we were going to get monthly post-closure care reporting instead of quarterly, and that's something that we had asked. Was there anything further? No. Well, it gives us a better idea of where we're going with our post-closure fund and how it's being spent, etc., on a monthly basis instead of a quarterly basis. Statement of royalties, CFO Martini.
I'll move that we receive and file,
Second.
and thank CFO Martini for including this. It's nice to see a little bit of income there again.
Yeah, I will present that report when I receive it in the council.
Thank you.
Any further? All in favor of receiving and filing? Unanimous. Emergency Management Select Committee. And was to choose 2 members of council to be on the standing committee, and my choice would be Councillor Defoe and Councillor Peters. Letter from, actually Councillor Coomer and Councillor Peters can carry on with the rest of it.
Well, we kind of covered this. We jumped the gun a little on this one. So we have a letter here that MLA Taggart sent on our behalf to the relevant provincial ministers. We did discuss with her, we had meetings prior to the virtual UBCM last year with the pertinent MLAs. However, the election was called right after that, and so those meetings were basically a waste of time. So she is lobbying on our behalf with the current ministers. So I would like to move that we send a thank you letter to MLA Taggart for her efforts in helping bring the flooding issues in Cache Creek to the attention of the relevant provincial ministers.
Second.
Can we vote with
Flip a coin.
Is there any further discussion on that matter? All in favor? Carried unanimously.
And again, my report's attached. We kind of added a little bit more to it, but move that be received and filed.
Second.
Thanks for that report. Information correspondence? Actually, there's one more.
Vote on that one.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Post.
So there was an additional item, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's the post-closure care statement.
Okay.
This is more like an FYI.
Okay.
Receive and file the post-closure care statement.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Information correspondence? New business? Questions from the public?
Okay, so my question to you is, are you interested in comments or strictly questions?
That's your choice, it doesn't matter, Garrett.
Okay, so I'm just going to stick with questions. Question 1. Is it not a conflict of interest when Councillor Sue Peters votes in favor with the mayor and defeats a motion because she is the mother of Santo's girlfriend and her vote would be swayed by Santo's agenda?
I would like to speak to that, please. Anybody that knows me knows that I am a very strong-willed individual and very opinionated. And I think that if you check the records, you'll find that I have not always voted with Mayor Tallarico. Matter of fact, we've had some pretty healthy discussions, and I really am quite insulted by the implication. But just to reassure people, though, I do not vote with Mayor Tallarico because he's with my daughter.
So this is in regards to the pool. Why was none of this information available to purchasers of homes we purchased to rebuy the pool? If we knew this, we would not purchase in Cache Creek.
Well, I just go back to the ads on television. Have you used a realtor? And if they did, then that realtor should have told her, or him, or them.
Okay, so next up was Santo the one who was hired in previous years to fix things at the pool? Do you want the names of the people asking these questions, or are you just happy with the questions? I don't know if that matters.
I was a contractor before I was mayor, if that's what... Now, since I've become mayor, I'm no longer a contractor that does any work at the pool. I don't even consult for the pool. I hope that answers their question.
I think that what that's more referring to is in 2017 and 2018 when there were, like the pump broke down and things like that.
Right.
That they're asking if you were the contractor at that time that fixed those issues.
I did, yes. Some of them. Not all of them.
when is this budget supposed to be done?
We'll be discussing budget meeting later on, budget dates later on in this evening's meeting.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the comments here. So why wasn't the grant applied for in 2019? I don't know which grant that is.
I can answer that one if you wish.
Sure, yeah.
2019, we got an extra $100,000 allotment from UBCM gas tax. And so instead of receiving 99 or 100,000, I can't remember the exact amount, sorry?
I think it was 206,000 if I remember.
Yeah,
correctly.
total. So 103 would be our normal allotment. We got an extra 103 to that year and that year only from the federal gas tax through UBCM. And we chose to use it to keep the pool operational that year. And we had the funding that year because we had that extra money.
But I would like to add though,
Go ahead.
because the gas tax fund money cannot be used for operational item. It has to be tangible capital assets. So we received a grant that we were not able to use it practically for keeping the pool operational.
Wasn't there recently $50,000 found and given away to charitable donations? Now, I think that's in reference to the
Foundation.
NEIT.
Community, the community foundation.
What's the question?
So wasn't there just $50,000 put into that NDIT fund?
There was 50,000 contributed by NDIT, Northern Development Initiative Trust, which we are a member of, and another 50,000 through the municipality of Cache Peak and its citizens put into a fund.
Okay. When do we get the budget? Which you already answered. Is it a conflict? Almost there. There was one about. There's one I'm thinking was wrong. Interested to know if. Nope, it keeps moving on me. I'm sorry.
There are more comments keep getting added. Do you want me to ask them? Because I've got them
Sure.
stationary
If
here.
you can.
Considering that many surrounding municipalities, including Ashcroft counties, have found ways to help their constituents to thrive in the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic, if the village finds there isn't room in the budget to open the pool this year, what is the village considering in terms of healthy recreation for the people of Cache Creek?
Well, I think that's a topic for council to discuss at the budget level. And once we have all those answers, then budget-wise, then we can start feathering out from that point and deciding on what we can do by using the Quick Start or the Rapid Start COVID-19 fund is one option. But at this point, we're all speculating, or I'm speculating at this point.
Okay, so that's the next one.
Well, so the next question is from Barbara at the Journal. Do you want it this time now, or do you want to save that for?
Let's save that for the press.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so question. The lifeguards are mostly students and they are wondering if they will have a job this summer. Keeping their qualifications current costs hundreds of dollars per year. Should these students go ahead and pay this money to recertify their first aid, life savings instructor, National Guard, and Red Cross water safety instructor tickets? Is there any hope of the pool opening this year? I'm sure council would not want students to suffer a financial loss waiting because of council's indecision.
I can't speak for them. If they choose to go down that road and requalify, that would be an asset to them. But I can't make that decision for them.
And anybody at home watching and listening, I do apologize if I missed your question. We're still trying to work through these, and
Oh, they're still coming through.
so Okay, so what's next here? This one?
Yeah.
Okay, there was no information online about the closure. Where would I have found that information before buying? But I believe you already answered that. Are those things you fixed currently broken now?
I can't answer that question.
Why did you not use the 100,000 to fix the pool? Which 100,000 is that?
The gas tax, I'm
The gas
assuming.
tax.
We used it to keep the pool open, operational.
Could that 50,000 have been used towards the pool?
It could have, yes.
Question there? Okay, so budget. What's the? It keeps moving. What's the date that this budget is due?
15th, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that being said, I think that.
I believe it has to be filed with the provincial government by the 15th of May.
Okay.
Oh, good news, that's cute.
This one?
Yep.
Okay. So what are you doing about the meth issue in town? As it is something the mayor can help with by telling the RCMP to focus on the drug issue in town. This is from the GovBC website. So please don't tell me once again this is not true.
What are we doing about the meth issue?
Yeah,
Is that the,
that was the question.
that's an RCMP. Ask the RCMP that question.
Is there, at this moment in time, is there any hope of the pool opening this summer?
Asked and answered.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, I think that we can move on to Barbara's question.
Yeah, so that was it for community questions, yeah.
And
Questions?
again, if we did miss something, people at home, we do apologize. We were trying to cipher all the, between comments and questions, so. But question one from the journal, budgets must be adopted by May 15th. Is there a chance of a public meeting about the pool happening before that, or will residents have to wait until April or May for a public meeting about the pool?
I think we cleared that question up earlier.
Yep. Okay, let's get one from Barbara. No, we'll go to the second one. We'll go to the second one.
Oh, I didn't see a second one.
I would just like to say that we all want to get this information out. There is no desire to not get it out. We just want to make sure that we have all of our information correct and ready to be able to give the best answers that we can.
Trying to look here. Oh, no, you know what it was? It was the same question done twice. Okay, so from what it looks like that's all of the questions.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same repeat questions asked in different ways.
So,
Yeah.
Will these be still up, all the comments and
Yeah,
questions
that's correct.
later so we can look
Yeah.
at them?
Yeah, and there are comments, but this is a question period, and so
Mhm.
we're only asking questions.
yeah.
Okay. Let's have a motion to move it to an enclosed.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Carried. Thanks.